Welcome to This Week in Cannabis Live. I am Jay Rosenthal. That's Marc Hauser. Over there is Jeremy Berke and AnnaRae Grabstein in the top right corner, I guess. We do the show every Friday at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific for the cannabis world, for us to connect, talk about what's happening this week. We rarely have breaking news, but AnnaRae, if you could share your screen, we could actually break some news.
Do it.
AnnaRae is trolling the DEA. Is what I'm going to chalk it up for. But we actually have some breaking news. AnnaRae, what did you find across your desk that we can break to the cannabis world right now?
Well, it sounds like the DEA has announced that they are going to release the registration for manufacturers and distributors to handle Schedule III medical marijuana this week. Deep in their website, if you go to apply for under form, I think it's 225A, which is the form that is specified to be appropriate for non-dispensary medical marijuana folks, you get this screen, which we're all looking at. And yes. It says that this week, the week of May 4th, they will be accepting applications and that they are updating their system. So it's both news and no news because we can't do anything, but it seems that there is at least a new page to tell us that soon we will be able to do something. So
and update. I wonder if updating their system means they're going to take some other form of payment other than PayPal when this is updated. But we talked about this last week, that it was only dispensaries that could apply and then pay by PayPal. Now it seems like there's a move for manufacturers and or distributors, but not the application is not yet open, even though it's now the end of the week of May 4th. Yes?
Yeah, and I did talk to some manufacturers who applied the same day that the dispensaries had applied. And it appeared to me that they had applied through the old existing system because there has been a system to get registration with the DEA for a controlled substance manufacturing for a long time. But it just wasn't specific to this new order. And there is actually the last sentence of what we're looking at here on the screen says that if you applied previously, there is no need to reapply and that they'll be in contact with you shortly to continue processing the application. So it sounds like if somebody applied with that old system, it wasn't necessarily correct, but it's going to be fine. So
okay, well,
those people too.
This is a good reason to tune in every week at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific for This Week in Cannabis Live, because sometimes we have news that other people either aren't talking about or haven't broken yet. So thank you for that, AnnaRae. Does this change anything for anybody right now?
No, I mean, it all it does is I think that folks do know that there's the 60-day open window and they need to figure out how to get all their stuff in order before that time. I will say that what the application is asking for, from my perspective, is fairly minor because it's check boxes. It says things like, do you have SOPs in place for, and then lists lots of things, and all you have to say is yes. At some point in the processing, you will need to actually share those SOPs, but this registration process doesn't include that.
The other thing we talked about last week, I think Ben brought it up, was that one of the questions was, have you ever sold a Schedule I drug or something like that?
Yeah.
So
which incriminates you in front of the DEA to be on board. So, it's a bizarre situation, to say the least.
It's like an immigration status when they ask you if you've ever been part of a terrorist organization. Like, who's going to answer yes to that question?
Right.
Also, how can you not answer yes? I mean,
you can't answer. You have to answer yes.
Public information that you've been doing it, so it seems like you have to answer yes. But maybe my Jewish grandmother, Marc Hauser, has a different opinion from the legal perspective.
Your Jewish grandmother's a lawyer too?
It's cold in here. Where's my tea? No,
Marc, what say you as the resident lawyer?
Look, I mean, this is not legal advice, but it's usually a bad idea to lie to the federal government.
That's good legal advice.
But yeah, I mean, it's a weird, it's a weird ask. Why are they asking it in this form? They know the answer, right. And so unless you're a brand new licensee who's never operated before, they know what the answer is. It's just as confounding as the question on the gun registration form. about about use of what is it, addictive substances, which could include caffeine. I mean, it's just as confounding. But.
That's what caught up Hunter Biden.
Yeah.
Caffeine?
No, I'm serious. That is the question.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah,
Right?
it is.
That is absolutely correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So that notwithstanding, there is interesting times, and now interesting times. We will continue to follow that. So thank you, AnnaRae, for bringing that to our attention. And that's not the only news of the week. Obviously, there was a lawsuit filed against 3 MSOs in Illinois. Marc, I'm going to go to you because you're the lawyer. We wrote about it on cultivated.news. What say you about this? Does this have legs? And or a sort of a broader question, because it's not the only lawsuit of the week. Like, are we going to start seeing more lawsuits related to this?
Oh, we've already seen a lot. I mean, the number of lawsuits in this industry has grown significantly over the past 2 years, which isn't surprising. I mean, it's a sign of maturity as well as a sign of the distress in the industry. And I think, lawsuits like this, I mean, it was conveniently timed to the fact that it was the day before SAM filed its lawsuit on the rescheduling order, or at least sorry, they didn't file the lawsuit. They filed basically a notice to the appellate court that is jurisdiction to get an order to allow it to file briefs, just to be specific. And this particular lawsuit was also leaked to the Free Press ahead of time, which filed an exclusive about it. So there is definitely, I don't know if it's coordinated, but certainly this lawsuit, the lawyer has, gone after the industry in other cases before. And so there is a PR campaign behind this if you're filing it with the Free Press or leaking into the Free Press. So, there is something going on, and if you read the complaint, or at least skim it, you'll notice that it's not until the page 60 something when it actually gets to the claims. Mm-hmm. There's a lot, the first dozen or so pages are describing the plaintiffs and the defendants, but then there's about 30 or 40 pages about the horrors of cannabis before it actually gets into the claims. And then the claims themselves are basically that allegedly the various MSOs made purported medical claims that, even though the claims are couched in not being definitive, that those still violate certain laws. And so I'm not a trade practices lawyer. I'm not an FDA lawyer, so I don't know how solid those claims are. And this, because this stuff is very subjective and very sort of jurisdiction specific, but it's troubling in itself that they're going after these companies.
Yeah. Jeremy, your take as well?
Yeah, a couple things here. I mean, one, again, caveat, not a lawyer, but I do think it's interesting that, this is classic big tobacco style tort litigation, product liability stuff. Like, we've seen cases like this against a lot of consumer products. So it's interesting, I think, number one. Number two, on Marc's point about, there really is, I think, like 38 pages about, how cannabis has affected all these people negatively, et cetera, et cetera. My thought is, like, let's have this argument in court, right? Like, let's call the expert witnesses if they do go to trial, and let's actually evaluate these claims in a body that pays attention, right? That's not social media or the media writ large. And so I think, for one, like, companies should be ready to go and get excited about, defending these claims and, like, coming up with the evidence. Did I just freeze?
No, you're good.
The point, though, is that none of how bad cannabis is for you really has to do with the claims themselves. That's what's really
right.
You can make an argument that this stuff is not medical, but which is, I guess, what they're trying to say. But it really doesn't. There's a difference between that and the actual sort of claim that is being asserted in this lawsuit that they are trying to make, that they're making health claims that do not exist. There's a difference, and so that's why I think it's much more about PR than it is about the substance of the damages.
There's also, I mean, I think there's also something the industry could do to get out in front of this. Not that they should take my advice, but you can lobby and put health warnings on the products proactively, rather than waiting for this litigation to come. Like whether or not you believe that the product should or shouldn't have this, there are ways to sort of work with those that are concerned with public health, whether rightfully or wrongfully, in order to better regulate the industry. And this is something, especially in Illinois, where the big MSOs are clustered and where, this attorney who filed the case is located. I mean, I feel like that's a pretty easy way to get in front of these problems rather than wait to get sued later. Because one of the things that stood out to me is that, these the classes that the attorney put together, like there's clearly some, fishing going on to find these people, right? I'm sure that all these people didn't independently call this attorney about it. And so, I think there's ways to get in front of this that the industry should be very careful of because, as Marc said, these cases are only going to ramp up, especially as cannabis is more in the news. As Sam files their suit with rescheduling, like there is blood in the water for attorneys who work on this stuff. And so I think the industry should be wary of that.
AnnaRae?
Yeah, this is also a class action lawsuit, which I think is notable because people who know me have heard me say there is no justice, there's only legal fees. And the thing about class action lawsuits is that often lawyers are not being paid their regular hourly fees. They're on contingency. It's like they're going to get a percentage of whatever the earnings are on the other side of this. And I think when we look at the growth of this type of lawsuit in cannabis, it's also a signal that people believe that there is capital to be extracted here. You don't bring a class action lawsuit against somebody that has nothing to take on the other side. I think that there's certainly a PR element to this, but this is also financially extractive in many ways from my position.
Yeah. Can we shift gears a little bit? Although some of the same companies had actually earnings this week. Jeremy, I saw we enlisted Claude in some of this. It's so burdensome to sort of get through all the calls, all the notes. One, how was using Claude for this, and what did we find out?
It was fun. Last night I wanted to use the experiment because I was like, should I sit down and listen to all the earnings calls and look at the statements or see what Claude comes up with? That was an easy choice. And so Claude, I pulled all the transcripts from Seeking Alpha, the earnings calls, and I basically copied and pasted the financial statements in. And I said, hey, what's interesting here? These are three things I'm looking at, rescheduling, 280E, and just general financial performance. A couple things. Curaleaf had a very good quarter, and they are kind of killing it in some ways. Net income swung to $70 million, which is huge for them. They had a profitable quarter. The stock's up like 50% this year. And so I think, clearly, there's good management going on as a takeaway. Again, not a financial analyst. Number two, I think Green Thumb Industries as well, still profitable. They more than doubled their net income for the quarter. The market didn't seem to love it as much as Curaleaf. Trulieve, and I'm going through the big three because those are sort of the biggest by revenue. Trulieve had the highest, let me fact check myself. They had the highest gross margin, but the stock fell. And so, I sure investors are looking at something there. I think, maybe net income was a net loss. But it was interesting to hear from all of them broader than the financial piece. This is the first time we could hear from all the executives about what rescheduling means, how they're planning for it. Analysts could ask them questions about it. So I thought that was pretty interesting, the way they're thinking about bifurcating their medical business from the recreational business, what this means moving forward. Obviously, CEOs are incentivized to make their stock go up. They're compensated based on that. But a lot of them were very bullish that we will get some sort of banking reform by Q3. Whether or not you want to believe them, I don't know. But that bullishness was something that, frankly, I didn't hear as much the last quarter. And I thought it was also interesting that Ben Kovler of GTI was doing earnings calls again. I think, he stopped doing those because there maybe wasn't much interest, or I don't want to put words in his mouth. He stopped doing them, and now he's doing them again. I think that's a sign too. So I thought it was interesting. I thought Claude helped us make sense of it. Again, we're not financial analysts. Buy stocks wisely, I think, especially in this industry. But maybe there's a little bit of a sign of a turnaround starting, hopefully.
Anybody else?
I will put I will put an asterisk on the Curaleaf numbers. They did the positive net income was due to something like a $98 million tax benefit, which is more of an accounting thing rather than a cash thing, I believe. But anyway, so if you back that out, they did actually lose money, but and it's a one-time thing. So I guess again, this is not an investment podcast, but I think that it's. I agree. I mean, it did seem like to be overall a better quarter than we've been seeing, though we aren't seeing a ton of revenue growth. But nonetheless, there should be a little bit of an asterisk on that one.
And Marc, can I stay with you on this, because you wrote this week unpacking Vireo's deal with Fluent. Give us a little bit of what you wrote about, and we'll direct people to Cannabis Musings afterwards as well.
Yeah, this one is, this was a big deal that was announced. Vireo has been on a tear lately with deals this year with a very interesting roll-up strategy. Though they're, I think they've been clear that they're not trying to fully integrate the companies yet, because they recognize that it's really hard to do in this industry. But, if you really dig into the documents themselves, you come to sort of realize or learn that that the lenders are really taking over a majority of Fluent here. And so it really is more of a lender takeover, a sort of an out of court restructuring by the lenders, with the equity getting, a decent amount of the business still than you get in out of court. Then it is a straight acquisition. And so, it's just another sort of, Vireo is taking advantage of its relationship to Chicago Atlantic to do more, distressed deals here. But go ahead, AnnaRae.
Yeah, well, so Marc and I were side texting about this during his musings, and I've certainly been following it. And some other things that I think are worth mentioning is that before this deal was announced for Vireo, the earlier deal with Hawthorne was announced, and Vireo acquired Hawthorne, and someone from the Hagedorn family, who is from the Scott's Miracle Grow family, joined the board of Vireo. And if we go back further and we remember who the original investors were in Riv, which was the New York entity that ultimately merged with Fluent, that's the same group. It was folks from the Scott's Miracle Grow and the Hawthorne Garden Group that were a part of Riv. And so you start to see that there's a lot of connections here, because when the deal got done between Riv and Fluent, there was debt and governance crossover with all of these folks. So I would say that although the deals aren't formally connected publicly, the same people are involved in these things. And it would not surprise me if all of the conversations were connected from the very beginning. So it's not that one started, ended, and then the next deal happened. It was like, oh, okay, let's look at this holistically of all of the different assets that these folks are a part of, and figure out how we reconcile it into maybe one new behemoth entity, Vireo. And that seems to be the vehicle that has been chosen to clean up the cannabis assets that the Scott's Miracle Grow and Hawthorne folks were and are a part of.
Fair enough.
Excellent
There
point.
were two things that came out of the administration this week, and one as recently as a few minutes ago that I want to sort of talk about because certainly there's been a lot of excitement about rescheduling, but Marc Hauser always cautions us that drugs are complicated to deal with from a policy perspective, especially if it has to touch Washington. And so part of it was the administration's 2026 National Drug Control Strategy, which had some fairly negative things to say about cannabis. That's one thing. But then even more topical or more sort of immediate, a story just posted on Marijuana Moment that White House Drug Czar clarifies that marijuana is still illegal following Trump administration's rescheduling move. Specifically, it was a quote on Newsmax, which is great. It's still illegal. This is from Sarah Carter Bailey, director of the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy. It's still illegal. Executive level Schedule 3 allows for doctors and research for medicine for medicinal purposes. So it sounds like this is getting more complicated before it gets more straightforward. Yes? Question mark? Anyone?
I think it just shows that the confusion that we've all had about what exactly the order absolutely means. Everybody has that problem. I mean, even the Congressional Research Service's publication of their take on the order showed a lot of hesitancy to say definitively what the result of this is. So it's not surprising that there's confusion within those agencies.
Yeah, and it's becoming. My sense is it'll become less clear before it becomes more clear. There's going to be more questions asked than answered over the sort of near and long term.
Yeah, I also think like the administration is not fully aligned on this, right? I think that's like I know it's a sort of a simple point, but this is a Republican administration full of Republicans who do not like cannabis, despite what Donald Trump is sort of poking them with a stick to do. And I think this is going to be a fight, right? I think it's not necessarily like a situation where we can count our chickens before they hatch for the June ALJ DEA hearing. And I think this is just another sign that like when you have Sarah Bailey, who has a pretty important position on drug policy, answering questions succinctly like this, it's a sign that there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, I want to stand up though for some of the actual data on public polling that showed that there's plenty of Republicans that support cannabis. So while the politicians and the talking heads in DC want to keep coming out with these prohibitionist reefer madness kind of perspectives, I wonder if these folks are seeing and paying attention to the fact that by and large, the way large majority of Americans at least support medical marijuana, and this ongoing commitment to prohibition. I'm not sure who it's benefiting and if the base is really excited about this.
Yeah. Well, see also gun control and abortion, that they don't care what the public thinks about.
Yeah.
That would be my 2 cents. That things, regardless of what the public thinks, the prohibitionists also don't necessarily care what the public thinks. And they're even more, many of them are more micro in what they're thinking about in terms of their electorate for sure, especially on the, right and left, but in this case, on the right. AnnaRae, I want to stick with you, shift it to a different topic. You were in Ohio. I was in New Jersey over the past week at industry events. You were at Ignite It. I was at MJ Unpacked. Takeaways from these events?
Ohio, super healthy market. Basically, I'd say that there's tends to be a either under licensing or over licensing in most markets that creates like very strange supply and demand dynamics in the first couple of years. It seems to be going a little better in Ohio. They have a healthy amount of dispensaries, not a huge amount of retail deserts around the state, and a number of businesses that are creating a decent supply chain. I think that there's still a bit of a supply crunch that are keeping prices relatively healthy / high for wholesale. But overall, it was very positive. People are excited about what's happening on the federal level. It just feels like there are positive signals, even if people don't really know what they mean. And shout out to the Ignite It team. I think ultimately they put on a great event. It was really well attended. I met some wonderful, lovely Ohioans. I walked around the city of Cincinnati and really enjoyed it. Lots of murals, live music, good food. Just kind of reminded me how there's all kinds of lovely pockets of people all around this country that love cannabis business, and are happy to have it in their communities.
Well, as lovely as Cincinnati may be, I've never been there. I was in Atlantic City. There's a beautiful ocean view from the hotel. I'm choosing my words very carefully. There's a beautiful view of the Atlantic Ocean from my hotel at the Hard Rock. The people in New Jersey are lovely, and the people at the MJ Impact event, like, unbelievable people all around. There is a great cheesesteak in Atlantic City proper called White House Submarines. I highly recommend it. It's worth a drive if you're in Philly to get, although you wouldn't leave Philly to go get a cheesesteak in Atlantic City, but if you're in Atlantic City, get that one. We had a great breakfast sponsored by our friends at Aquina Capital, and we had, 75 people in our suite, which was great, and great bagels in Atlantic City as well, I will say. And I will echo what you're saying. Like, there is optimism might be too strong a word, but light at the end of the tunnel type of view of what's happening, certainly in New Jersey, but also on the federal level. I also think unpacking what is happening on the federal level and what it means for everybody's individual business, I think is still yet to be determined. I think there's a lot of hope that banking will be normalized, but that could mean a lot of different things. I think most urgently, or most immediately, it may mean credit cards at dispensaries, which I think would be a massive boost to a lot of dispensary owner operators around. I think it was much less likely to mean normalized lending practices from banks, to be quite honest, or maybe even normalized sort of banking, sort of day-to-day banking. But it was good to be out there in New Jersey, see what's happening. One note, when you leave Philadelphia and then you're right on the border of New Jersey, right on the border in Pennsylvania, and also right near all the stadiums. So where the Eagles play, where the Sixers play, where the Flyers play, and where the Phillies play, there's like a Trulieve dispensary, like not on that property, but very close. Like you have to go by it to get there or leave. It was interesting. I took a picture of it. And so it was good to be there as well. I want to start this segment, the next segment of winners and losers. If people have things ready to provide winners and losers of the week, this is going to be our new segment we do. Jeremy, have you been thinking about a winner or loser?
Target. Target's a winner because they are rolling out their hemp beverage program to 300 new stores, Florida, Illinois, and Texas. They're a winner because, one, it's Target. This is a strong sign for normalization of these products. Everyone who is going to Target and seeing these on store shelves is saying, maybe cannabis isn't so evil. And that's especially important in Texas right now as they have this fight. Two, because I just think it's a pretty novel way to get in front of an emerging industry they think is going to be valuable, obviously, while also having a good plan in place to just write the products down if regulations don't change ahead of time. So I think from just an intellectual perspective, that's an interesting choice. But from an industry perspective, it's a big win for normalization. And so I was interested to see that news. It was a BevNet scoop earlier this week. And, I'll certainly be following it. I don't know if Target plans to lobby on the issue or help with the lobbying effort. But, at the same time, what I do know is that if they want to write down, I'm sort of guessing here, $10 million worth of hemp beverages, they can very easily do that in a way that smaller mom and pops can't. So I want to be cognizant of that, but I do think it's a big win. And I think it's a big win for the industry, for consumers, and for normalization that these products will be all over Texas.
Marc, you're up next. Winners, losers.
I saw an advertisement for Good Trip, which is apparently a vape device that combines, it's the first agentic cannabis device that's connected smart device that combines premium cannabis, blockchain rewards, and AI-powered asset tools. Like, that's everything in one device. We all win from that. Like, I love this industry.
There's no crypto involved in that?
Oh, there is crypto.
Okay.
There's Bitcoin in there.
Okay, perfect.
Somehow.
I'm sure.
So, yeah. Yeah.
It's probably, is there Melania coin? Because that sounds like the next thing to add into that.
It's amazing. We live
You
in
can
a,
vape Melania coin.
I'm at a loss.
AnnaRae, you are up. Winners, losers.
I've got two losers. The first loser is Michigan cultivators that are supposed to be paying their Q1 increased massive taxes right now from the new tax that was implemented, and it's now due, and so they are big losers. 24% tax in Michigan. It's really, really bad. And then the other loser is something that I just haven't seen covered very much in US media, and those are tobacco smokers in the UK. That just recently the UK passed a smoking ban that is going to roll out as a full ban for all people 17 years and younger, going on into the future, extending 1 year every year forward, so that in the future, smoking will be banned for all ages of people. So yeah, the losers are the tobacco smokers in the UK.
Okay, I have winners. I'm going to end it with winners. Although there's a similar loser in Canada. I think PEI wants to raise the cannabis buying age from 19 to 21, but we'll get to that maybe next week with our losers. I want to say winners. We had our brand rankings, or Lit Alerts brand rankings in New York, the power rankings this month for April. And Heirloom in particular, I want to call out as a winner because they're always on top. And it speaks to the diversity of product, but also the brand and their ability to extend that to other products, in addition to beverages, but also vapes, pre-rolls. Like, they are sort of up and down the category, number of different categories, and always in the top 5 or 10. And so that puts them sort of number one in the brand ranking. So shout out to Heirloom from, I think it's Lafayette, New York, just outside of Syracuse.
They're
so
nice
shout out to them and their team
too,
because what's that?
They're nice people. Like,
yes,
they're really people.
Yeah.
And they may or may not have a concert series on their farm on the orchard this summer that we're going to possibly at the end. So we could all convene and go there. Not the easiest place to get to from where all of us live, but worth the trip to Lafayette, New York, outside of Skinny Atlas, if you need to know. Between Skinny Atlas and Syracuse, we can all convene at the Heirloom orchard as it stands. So I want to thank each of you for this first segment of Winners and Losers on a very busy week in cannabis. Thank you, Marc. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, AnnaRae. We missed you, Ben, if you're watching somewhere. And shout out, AnnaRae, this is for your friend, Gail Rand, who I learned is a super fan of high spirits. And I met her in New Jersey at our breakfast. So shout out to Gail Rand, wherever you may be watching this, because I know you follow everything that AnnaRae does. So a shout out to you, and thanks for being a fan. And thanks, everybody. We will see you next week. And happy Mother's Day to the mothers out there on Monday. I'm sorry, Sunday, not Monday. Sunday. We'll have a good day, everybody, and we will see everybody next week.